This is Codified Wisdom. Sharp insights, no fluff, and real-world wisdom from leaders who want to get you further, faster. Now, here's your host, Eric Eager.
All right. Well, hey, I'm Eric Eager, and this is an episode of Codified Wisdom, where we're trying to learn from other people and make sure that we don't make the same mistakes. And man, today's guest, he really doesn't need an introduction for those in the accounting profession. And Barry Melancon served as the president and CEO of AICPA for 3 decades. Led the organization through some of the most transformational periods in its history. He's been a visionary voice for the profession, navigating shifts in technology, globalization, regulation, and ever evolving role in CPA, of a CPA. And under his leadership, the AICPA became a global force, and its influence has shaped not just the profession, but how businesses think about trust, strategy, and value. And now, as the next chapter you continue to invest time and energy in helping leaders. And man, I'm just thankful to have you on here talking and sharing some of that wisdom. And thank you for joining the show here.
Well, Eric, it's great to be with you, and it's great to call you a friend. We've built a relationship over the last couple of years, and it's been very special. And frankly, I look forward to part of this having a little bit of discussion about all that impact you're talking about and change, and how 4Impact Data is actually a piece of that. So it's my honor to be with you, and I look forward to our conversation.
Man, well, yeah, first thing we try and do is, have everybody share their journey. And what I'd love to hear, because, when you shared, we became friends and you shared your history and your story and the risk that you took at different points to where you're at today. A lot of people don't know or may not appreciate a lot of the things that you did in your history. Share, talk to me about early life and how did you get to where you're at and some of the milestones along the way?
Well, thanks for that question. I could probably spend the whole time. I won't on that because I'm sort of proud of my journey. But I grew up in South Louisiana. The easiest way for me to describe it is where the BP oil spill was, along the Gulf Coast in Louisiana. That's basically where I grew up. The swamps, the Cajun country, however you want to describe it. I literally had alligators in my backyard, a big backyard. We had about 10 acres of land. I grew up and farming and all of that stuff. I grew up in a family that was at my father and mother's, sister and brother's level. There was a total of 19 siblings in that big menagerie of people, and I was the youngest on that first cousin line. I was the youngest of all 19 of those families.
Wow.
So I sort of grew up in an adult environment. And the next closest to me was like 5 years older than me. So I sort of grew up in an adult environment where, every family gathering, it was just everybody older than me. And, in South Louisiana is a family-oriented culture.
Okay.
And so you had a lot of family types of things. And, my father was sixth grade educated, and there were not very many professionals, hardly any professionals in that whole set of 19 families. The closest one was probably a pilot. And I think that upbringing just really sort of made me an adult early. I skipped a year in high school. I skipped a year in college. I was out of college at 20. And one of the defining moments in my life was really, where do you go to work?
Yeah.
And my wife and I was married right when I got out of college, and we were going to move to Houston. And frankly, a very, very tiny firm, under 10 people in my hometown of Houma, Louisiana, offered me a job, offered me the same amount of money as the big firms in Houston at the time. And so we said, well, let's just stay here. We can always go to Houston, or we can always go to the big city another time. And I learned a lot being in a small firm, frankly. I went to a small, university, Nichols State University, 6,000 people, had a good business school, good accounting program, but
Yeah.
it's not big time prestigious university. And I think that adult upbringing and all of that just sort of made me very comfortable in dealing with clients and the things that CPAs do. I talk about trusted advisors and the CPA role, and
Yeah.
um, I always had that confidence, and so that was sort of where it was. And um, you talk about defining moments. I was literally at the firm for 9 months, and I had about a 80% pay increase job offer from a client. And I had that was tough. That was a
Yeah.
lot
I
of
was gonna
money, a
say.
lot of money. And
Yeah.
and I went into the managing partner's office and said, "Hey, I got this offer, and I'd like to talk to you about it." And so I had the confidence to go in and do that. And two partners in the firm, we went to lunch that day. It was about a 2-hour lunch, and they they talked about what it was like to be a partner in that firm, how much money
Yeah.
they made, and what was life about. And then they said at the end, but we're not going to adjust your pay. You got to make a decision on what do you want to do
Oh
and what do
man.
you want to do with your life.
Oh.
I stayed because they painted a picture of the impact of the profession, particularly on small business, which I know, Eric, you have a passion for. And they clearly laid out that, I would be a partner in the firm. And they said, you're doing all the right things. You got to keep doing that, but you'll be a partner in this firm. And I said, I want to be a partner by 25. And they said, okay, we hear you, and we think you can make that. And so I chose not to leave, and I ultimately made partner by 25 in that firm.
Yeah.
And 3 years after making partner, I was offered the CEO job for the Louisiana CPAs, and I went back to my partners at that point. I was a partner, and I said,
Yeah.
"Well, I got this offer," and they said, "Oh, we'll give you more money." And I said, "No, it's not about money. I want to go make an impact for the profession in a
Wow.
different way." And so I left, and then 7 years after that, I was 36. I was named CEO of the AICPA, and had to move to New York. Had to move an 11-year-old son to New York, and those were some pretty significant decisions, but I think it was shocking to almost everyone that the AICPA would name me, but I had a lot of confidence in where the profession needed to go. And I guess 30 years later, most of that stuff came to fruition.
Yeah.
So pretty proud of that trajectory.
Well, as a CPA, I'm thankful that um because it. How did you explain to your wife though that 90% that you were going to turn it down? Because I'm sure my wife and my family, I'd get support, but that would still be a tough call because back then you're probably a young couple and that that's a lot of money and
Yeah,
to turn it down to stay the course and principled on, hey, I want to have an impact.
yeah.
That's still going to be a tough conversation.
It was. She's very supportive though, and she was long run also, and that was the truth when we were talking about going to New York as well. She grew up in South Louisiana as well. She grew up on an island off of the coast of Louisiana, so an even smaller
Oh
environment than
my
I
God.
did. And so, she was incredibly important in that decision-making process and supportive, quite frankly, Eric. And so that never really was an issue. We talked about it, and she was supportive whatever I thought was right. And I think it was good decisions for both of us.
Oh man. Well, hindsight's 2020. So it's some great calls. So, I guess from that journey in your leadership, and that tenure, if you were going to tell the story in chapters, what would the title of your favorite chapter be in your book?
It's a really tough question. I would say that I would have to say would be somewhere around preparing the profession for the future. Um, and the small CPA firm was amazing and built lifelong friends, and Louisiana, head of Louisiana was amazing. We passed some incredible legislation to help the profession. But I think I was put in the role at the AICPA to evolve or help evolve with the help of thousands of other people, volunteers and staff and board members and the like, um, to help evolve the profession. And the AICPA was a different type of organization when I became CEO. And I think I was hired. I think the people making that selection um, really felt that the profession had to change and how the AICPA and the profession interacted had to change. And I do think we did that. I do think I look back
Yeah.
and I would say we could do more, but we did so many things.
Oh man.
And so I would put that as the chapter, really the fundamental evolution of the profession. And the way I like to say it, to be simple about it, and I think simple communication is a very important
Yeah.
thing. Um, I think what we did is we changed the sort of workings of the profession from being a philosophy of saying the things you couldn't do to to actually promoting the things you could do. And I think that's really where the profession evolved to. Yeah, rules and ethics and standards are important in our profession, but they have to give breadth and opportunity to doing the things that are necessary for the profession to deliver on its trusted advisor promise going forward. And I really think so. I guess maybe the chapter of would be titled something like from saying no to saying yes, you can. I think that's really what I would probably be most proud of.
Oh man. That sounds like a good chapter. So we'll be looking for that in the book here, but I'm sure there'll be one coming out here sooner or later. And so in regards to all the accomplishments, and now you're in a new kind of stage in life, and what's keeping you busy these days, and tell me a little bit about where you're focusing your energy today.
I felt my most value add would be to still be involved in the profession, and I would say in the aspects where the profession is continuing to evolve. So we know private equity is having a huge impact on the profession. I'm chairing a global board, Baker Tilly International. I built, we merged AICPA and SEMA when I was at AICPA. So I have a very significant global footprint. I passionately believe that the CPA profession, is the most local, the most national, and the most global of all professions. If you think about Main Street, CPAs make Main Street work. If you think about sort of our national economy and particularly very sophisticated private companies and our capital market system, the CPA profession is critical. And frankly, and I know there's a lot of political discourse on this today, but we live in a globally dependent economy, and
Yeah.
the American economy is a stalwart in that global economy. We have a role, and the profession is critical to that because we operate globally as a profession, and no other profession can make those claims that I just said. And so I did a lot of that in my career, and so being a non-executive director of a what is today about a $7 billion global network of firms, which is rapidly on path to being hopefully a $10 billion network of firms that really serve middle market extensively,
Yeah.
is something that I have a passion for. And I think middle market is absolutely essential to the economy's success in the future and all the challenges that AI and other things bring to that table. So that's one of the things that I'm doing. I'm working individually with some of the firms in the Baker Tilly network. I'm still helping CPA.com, which I founded at AICPA, which is in the area you're in, Eric, in the full
Yeah.
impact data area. I'm still doing some consulting work there. I'm doing some work with Caseware because it's tied to the reengineering of the audit through the DAS project that we created at the AICPA, and they serve the profession. And I'm doing some not-for-profit work. I'm doing some work with For Impact Data. We'll come back to that because
Yeah.
of how I see it impacting young people. So I think about it, young people, I think about the trusted advisor role, the footprint that the profession has. And then there's a couple of places, as I said, in the not-for-profit space, and one of them particularly that's about how do we instill civics education back in the K through 12 and in the university systems, because I think there's a lot of structural things that people need to understand, and we've gone through 20 years of understanding why America is great is not taught, and why our system of checks and balances is important is not taught. And so I'm working with the foundation board that's really committed to changing that outcome.
Oh man. Well, I don't think I think I think you didn't retire. You just refocused in different areas.
And my wife would agree with you that I didn't retire.
Which is, I appreciate it, and I just know that the continued impact. You know what? You know, we kind of talked about that, but for what do you see? Because we're in this crazy period right now where um, this is, a transformational period, not only for just businesses in the world, but how do you think, what's coming up for the profession? What's the next generation of CPAs, and what do you think their role is going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, look, I have some thoughts on that, but for anyone to have the confidence that they know exactly how 10 years is going to evolve
Yeah,
would be fool's gold, quite frankly, because I don't think anyone can predict that with certainty. Here's how I think about it. I think it's not as important to predict exactly what the profession will be doing, but I think it's more important to think about how this uncertainty that we have, the political unrest, the governmental unrest, the AI and other technological implications of how the world is going to change, how business is going to be impacted, how humans are going to be impacted.
yeah,
I think I think it's important to understand that that uncertainty, however we think about it inside of our profession, is actually greater uncertainty in general business and
yeah,
entrepreneurism, et cetera. And our role as the trusted advisor to sort of be a handholder to help businesses and entrepreneurs and large businesses think through all of these things, that trusted advisor role is actually more needed than ever because the businesses of the world are more uncertain than ever. And so, if we think about our role as bringing good thinking processes, being informed, evolving our skill sets and our competencies, um, I think if we think about that as a way of doing really important work for the business, the economy as a whole, then I think that's what we ought to be focused on. And so if we evolve all what we need to and continue to evolve, and we're
yeah.
going to have to be committed to continual evolve, then we're going to do what we're really here for, that independent, objective voice that helps people through uncertainty and difficulty and tough decisions. And that's how I think about the future of the profession. That if we can be committed to our core ethics and our core competencies with the commitment of helping people through that, then we're going to be incredibly valuable and incredibly successful.
Oh man, I saw a study from the last couple of years ago, and it's been consistent that CPAs are the most trusted business advisor of anybody. And it's funny because I've seen the study where they're more trusted than clergy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
More than clergy, more than the media, more than government leaders, more than big business leaders, more than anybody. That's
and
right.
well, and I think do you think with the acceleration of access to information and AI, that these business owners even more of having that person in the loop, because the stuff's going to be coming at you so fast in so many different areas. Having that person that knows, trust, and in there to help guide you through that tough journey of building a business. I mean,
It's essential, Eric. It's essential. You got to have that trusted relationship. That's why I think it's the profession is so much fun in a smaller firm environment and a mid-market environment because that's really, really something that people, and I think people early in their career, which we'll come back to, can really be incredibly valuable on. And I think if you think about anything in life, challenges that people have, maybe it's health, maybe it's, family decisions, et cetera. We always turn to people we trust, right?
yeah,
And sometimes if it's a really personal thing, it's a real close friend or something along those lines. But when you think about planning for children's, financial well-being, planning for your business, planning for investments, planning for business decisions that need to be made, maybe starting new businesses, buying things, it's really the CPA relationship that people turn to for all of that because they trust them. And I always say this, the CPA in a small firm knows everything about a person
yeah,
before more earlier than most anyone in their family does. Maybe their spouse knows it first, but because you turn to them, because everything in life has sort of this business and financial connotation that comes with it, and the CPA is trusted. I want to go back to that trusted point really quick.
yeah,
Um, I always said I had the best job in the world because of exactly what you just said. When I was CEO of the AICPA, SEMA, 700,000, almost 700,000 members globally. I don't think you could take 700,000 of anything and come close to the quality that the 700,000 CPAs and CGMAs that were affiliated with our organization
yeah,
globally had. I mean, if you think about that, yeah, we all have weak links in any group, and
yeah,
700,000, you're going to have some weak links. But the reality is, collectively, think about how much those people do, how much they do in their community, how ethical they are, how they work on their competencies, how they give what they believe is good and solid advice, and help businesses and people make good decisions personally and in their business environment. You can't find 700,000 people that equates that. And so I think if you're a CPA and part of that, you ought to be awfully proud of that.
and well, and then yeah, that kind of leads us in the next discussion about um, the things that we're doing at For Impact Data, again with this whole idea of changing the odds for business owners, to give them a better chance to survive and thrive, and via taking the wisdom and knowledge and equipping advisors, with now it couldn't be more. I couldn't be more excited for entrepreneurs these days, but also I've got a little bit of chip on my shoulder being a CPA, because for a long time, people would say, you know, hey, why, have you talked to your CPA? They, like you said, so many business owners don't understand a lot of times the advice and wisdom and knowledge that your CPA gives you on an everyday basis. And to codify that and scale it, that some of the things we're doing. But tell me a little bit, as I've shared the story of what we're doing to help the business owners, but even more help the profession transition that ability for them to help more people and more scale and these other things. Tell me a little bit about what got you excited about what we're doing at For Impact Data.
So there's two components of it. One is the scale part of how can you really make an impact on more people individually. And the other is what I would say is how does a young person in the profession have the confidence and capability to make that impact earlier in their career? And I'm going to focus on that latter point first, because I know you focus extremely well on the scale point, but I want to tackle it from the profession's hat perspective and why I have so much passion for impact data and what you have because of what I believe, sort of back to your question about where the profession's going as well. I think the number one challenge for the profession, and in this case, I can make the case in a corporate financial management perspective as well as in a public practice. But let me just use public practice for illustrative purposes to start with. What traditionally has been the model of the profession is a person comes in from college and they migrate up and they get
Yeah.
confidence. They expose to things to build confidence so that they can be more valuable for clients, right? And particularly important in CAS and business advisory, et cetera. And I would say in tax and audit as well, but people would tend to focus on it in the non-audit space. The reality is the thing that a young person lacks is the confidence, what I would call the business acumen to really deliver that value.
Yeah.
Now, all the way back to the beginning of this conversation, I was incredibly fortunate um, at 20 years old, 21 years old in this small CPA firm, having two partners in the firm that just constantly brought me with them to clients, et cetera,
Yeah.
and encouraged me to say something if I thought something. But the reality is, you have to have the confidence to do that. And how do you have that confidence is to have the competence in order to do it or the information in order to do it. I think the number one challenge for the profession is the business model shift. We will not have as many entry-level positions in the profession. And by that I mean the work that people traditionally
Yeah.
do. We'll probably have the same amount of people. Maybe the people are constructed differently, but the work that people did the first 2, 3, 4 years in the profession is going to shrink. And I call it a fat middle organization. We're going to have the bulk of the people in the middle of the CPA firm or the management accounting function. And what does it take to get there? And the challenge, that biggest challenge is how do we take what took 6 or 7 years to get there? How do we get there in two or less? Because that's what the world's going to expect. And what for impact data does is give you, I'm not going to use the word tool because that's a way oversimplification of what it does. What it gives you is the confidence, the capacity, the information set, hangs it together using AI, genetic AI, to look at your client's information, to compare it to others, and to really have value add to bring to that entrepreneur. And if you can get that in your first couple of years, your career is going to skyrocket and you're going to be way more valuable to the client and the firm or the management accounting function. And that's what for impact data is all about. Yes, in doing it, it creates a scalable notion that you can do that for more clients at a time. That is true because of the capabilities it gives you. But if you give me the scale and I don't have the confidence and the competence, the scale isn't going to matter. And
Yeah.
so that's really what's, I think, incredibly important. And it, to me, addresses the most important sort of learning curve for that young professional and the need for the firm's business model to evolve by putting more people in the middle quicker inside that firm. That's why I have that passion. And to put it simply, it, I'm a big person in conversations where I've been taught through executive coaches, et cetera, about always asking the question. You're asking the questions today. And I use this example with you. Give these young people the notion that they know something about what this business is facing, other than just the financial statement. And they have
Yeah.
the conversation with the entrepreneur and also give them a tool that says, Eric, you're an entrepreneur. We just had this great half-hour discussion about your business. Would you be interested to know what I thought you might have asked me? And every entrepreneur in the world is going to say, I'd love to know what you think I might have asked you. And if you have that sort of in their toolkit, man, the confidence build, the capability build, and the value you're giving that client through the roof. And that's what AI can give to people, and obviously people with more experience as well, to be that trusted advisor to help, back to your earlier question, that entrepreneur, that business, help figure out the uncertainty that they're wrestling with.
Yeah.
And that's really what I think is the home run.
Oh man. Well, hey, thank you for those kind words because I think we spent a bunch. I personally have made so many dumb mistakes building businesses, and I know a lot of people that we know. And what I think we were looking at of how to change the odds Well, the primary reason that businesses fail, and I've had businesses fail, is because I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't have the experience. And so now these young entrepreneurs, but also these young professionals, equipping them with the confidence, because AI is not going to magically solve all the problems.
Yeah.
It's just going to help you get to an answer or options much faster. And so now that young person, now they have time and energy to go and get mentored and coached. They can literally make a difference. We're going to, like your point, I think the entry level is going to accelerate that decision, but gaining that confidence. So when I walk in there and say, this is what's going to make a difference and here's why. And then to your point, half the time that, at least my experience is, wasn't the questions that I was trying to get answered. It was the questions I didn't even know to ask.
Yep.
And and so that's what we're trying to make a difference. And not trying, we're executing on it. And with great people like yourself helping us, spread the word. And
You asked me to name a chapter. Maybe a subtext for impact data is to give the person or the CPA to give you the confidence to help make your client better. I mean, I think that's really what the capability is all about. I think it can be really successful, and I think it can be really important to the evolution of CPA firms. And that's what you're saying, and that's what you believe in, and that's what you're trying to build, and you are building, quite frankly, and it's going to continue to evolve and get better and better and better because that's what you're trying to do as well.
wow. Well, thank you. And so as we kind of wrap things up here, what we'd like to do on this, on Codified Wisdom is ask you the question, what one lesson, if you had to learn the hard way, what hard lesson if you had to go back in time and I suddenly came up with this magic time machine, you could go back to the young Barry and say, hey, don't do this. Here's the lesson I learned the hard way. What would you go back in time and advise and coach yourself that may have gotten you a little bit further faster on your career path if you didn't have to learn the hard way?
Well, my career path was pretty quick to be CEO of the AICPA at that age. So I'm gonna give you two thoughts on that. The first one is um, I was about 38 when Enron happened, and I was the CEO of AICPA, and I was dealing with a lot of very senior people, a lot of complex issues. Um, and I think it comes back to, you know, the intuition, the confidence that I had. It was a very complicated set of facts. And inevitably you're going to second guess yourself in every one of those steps, right? The reality is, I look back on that, the intuition, the positions we took, the things we did in protecting the public interest and protecting the profession, standing up to things that were, off the reservation, so to speak. I think that I think having that confidence, that just trusting instincts is a very important element of that. And I think that's hard to do when things are coming at you in a thousand
Yeah.
different ways and moving very fast. And for the most part, I think I did it. But there were a couple of points um, that if you could do over, I would probably do a little bit differently. Although I do think the outcomes were incredibly positive for the profession. The second part I would say is there were often times that I was in, situations, particularly being young in a role, and this goes back to what we were just talking about with people having the business acumen and the confidence. And you can't help but think of yourself, do I belong with these people here?
Oh yeah. Imposter
Do
syndrome.
I belong? And I had a lot of confidence, but there were still a lot of times that I I thought about that. And there were times I could have leveraged my position and leverage my capabilities even better. But I would pause in some of those situations. And that little pause sometimes, even if I ultimately got there, time is everything in a lot of those types of situations. So being confident and and I would say the next part of that question is, people say, how can you really be confident in all of these things? I think confidence comes from passion. I think if you have passion about something, you dig into it, you learn it, you see it in a different way. And I've always prided myself in having that passion for the profession. I still do. And I think that passion is very important in delivering on confidence. So those are some of my thoughts in that space.
Oh man. Well, I know that myself and a lot of other people will definitely learn from that experience. Well, well, again, I want to again thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and sharing some wisdom and thoughts. And for those who are watching or listening, the key is I hope you took away some wisdom so that you can get further faster. And stay tuned for the next episode of Codified Wisdom. And again, thank you for your time.
Eric, thank you for being with you, and stay committed to making the profession better as well.
Oh, you know it. You know it. We're not going anywhere. I guess, to your point, I'd rather have hustle and errors and the passion and try, get caught in the act of trying. It's what I always say. So, all right. Well, listen, again, appreciate everybody, and just stay tuned for another episode of Codified Wisdom.
Thanks for listening to Codified Wisdom with your host, Eric Eager. Want more? Subscribe and follow Codified Wisdom on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. To learn more about Eric Eager and how 4Impact Data helps leaders get further, faster, visit 4impactdata.com.